will now be offered an increased incentive payment of £10,000 per person and up to a maximum of £40,000 per family.
Good morning, or good afternoon, depending where you are. This is UK Pulse. I'm Jack Carter. Britain's had a brutal week. A shock asylum package promising up to £40,000 to go home. A spying probe that touches an MP's household. And an economy that's been downgraded yet again. 3 big blows. 3 big questions. Which one lands hardest for you? Hold that thought and stick with us.
Hi, Jack. I'm Amira Shah. We'll take each of those in turn. Borders, security and the economy, and try to cut through the spin. No slogans, just what these changes actually mean for people and for policy.
Right. Quick roadmap. First, the asylum bombshell. Second, the spying arrests and what they mean for trust in our politics. Third, the downgrade to growth and what it feels like at kitchen tables. Then, I want your voice notes. Short, sharp, honest. Which of these hits you? Say why.
Perfect. Let's start at the top. Immigration. The Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, has announced a new package that's been framed as a toughening and includes a voluntary return scheme offering up to £40,000 to some migrants who go home. It's been all over the headlines.
Up to £40,000. Listen to that phrase. Sounds huge, right? People hear it on the news and they're aghast. Why are we paying people to leave, they say. But we need to be precise. Amira, break it down for us. Who actually qualifies for that cash?
OK, important qualifier. Up to is the headline, not the norm. The package bundles together several types of support. Travel costs, resettlement assistance, help to find housing back home, and in some cases, lump sum payments aimed at reintegration. It's targeted, usually for people assessed as having little prospect of successful appeal, or those who've broken rules, worked illegally, or refused to cooperate with the asylum process. So the majority won't see a £40,000 cheque in their hand.
So, nuance. But nuance doesn't sell on the street. People still feel like the state is handing out money while their mate on the 0-hour shift is struggling. That's the outrage I keep hearing. And there's the policy shift too. Losing accommodation and support for certain refused migrants. That's a big change in principle.
It is. The Home Office is reframing its duty. Historically, there's been an absolute duty to prevent destitution for asylum seekers. Mahmood's package moves to conditional support, comply with rules, cooperate with removals, or accommodation withdrawn. The calculation is both financial and behavioural. The government says this saves money in the long run by deterring illegal work and repeated applications.
But is it deterrence or just political theatre? I mean, you toe the line, you're shown the door with a severance package. Sounds sensible on paper. But what about the mechanics? Are we set up to make removals actually happen? Or is this, frankly, a PR stunt?
There's the rub. Enforcement capacity matters. Charter flights, diplomatic cooperation with countries of origin, legal challenges, and the backlog in appeals. If removals don't happen quickly, the threat of withdrawn support is weaker. Also, legally vulnerable people, trafficking victims, those with new evidence, still need routes to fair appeal. Rushing can create fresh legal costs.
So it could save cash, or it could create new bills for the taxpayer. And politically, it's risky. Left-wing critics call it a bribe to leave, and some on the right say it doesn't go far enough. Public anger too, Amira. Why would we give money to migrants when our own workers are struggling? What do you say to that?
I get it. The optics are awful for many. But policy needs 2 things, effectiveness and legality. If you refuse accommodation without safe alternatives and end up forcing people into destitution, the state still faces human rights obligations and legal costs. The 40k headline aims to shift the calculus, offer a route home with dignity, if it works. The question is whether this is designed to work or just to sound tough.
This government will now pilot a similar model for families who are failed asylum seekers, a small number of whom will now be offered an increased incentive payment of £10,000 per person and up to a maximum of £40,000 per family. To put that in important context, today, a family of 3 in asylum hotel accommodation costs up to £158,000 per year. Should these incentives prove effective, they will represent a significant saving to the taxpayer.
And that's what we'll test with listeners. Send us a voice note, Jack, smart move, or Jack, madness. Keep it short. Now, moving on.
The second story is more delicate. The Met has arrested 3 men suspected of spying for China. One of them is the husband of Labour MP Joani Reid, East Kilbride. Important to stress, they are suspects, all in custody. The investigation is ongoing.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to make a statement regarding 3 arrests that took place this morning as part of counter-terrorism policing investigation into suspected National Security Act offences. I can confirm that this relates to China.
Yeah, let's be crystal clear. Allegations, not verdicts. Joani Reid says she's seen no evidence her husband break the law, but the optics are, well, they're explosive. An arrest connected to an MP's household. That plays straight into people's fears about foreign influence, which we've been warning about for years.
It absolutely raises questions about vetting and counter-espionage, but it's also easy to leap to conclusions. The counter-terror unit and specialist teams handle this because it's national security sensitive. The fact that arrests happened in London and Wales shows the operation had reach. For MPs, the question will be, could this have been flagged earlier? What vetting gaps exist?
So is this a failure of vetting or a failure of imagination? Are Parliament's security checks simply not equipped for the subtle ways influence can spread through family, business ties, hospitality? And, bluntly, do voters now worry their MP might be compromised?
Voters certainly will worry, but 2 things. 1. Security services do not hand out guilt verdicts in public until evidence supports it. 2. Vetting is a balance between civil liberties and safety. You can't keep every allied nation's citizen out of Westminster households without creating discrimination and absurdity. That said, the case will prompt reviews, relationship disclosures, staff background checks, and maybe tighter guidance for MPs on conflict of interest.
And politically, Keir Starmer's government will be embarrassed. You can bet the opposition will use this. But remember, this is not yet a Labour problem, any more than it's a Conservative one. Foreign intelligence doesn't check party membership. It looks for access. That's the scary bit.
Exactly. We should look at the systemic risk, China's global reach and willingness to pursue influence campaigns. Parliament must be resilient. But also, and I want to stress this to listeners, we must not shrink from civil liberties or race to suspicion. There's a fine line.
Listeners, quick take. Do you feel more worried about who is influencing your MP, or do you think this is overblown until the courts decide? Voice notes, please. Honest, short.
And finally, the economy. The Office for Budget Responsibility has downgraded growth for 2026 to 1.1% from 1.4%. Not a catastrophe, but it's a notable slowdown. Unemployment is expected to rise later this year. Chancellor Rachel Reeves is urging calm, promising stability, but the numbers don't feel great at kitchen tables.
No, they don't. People I speak to say wages are stuck, bills are up, and a recovery doesn't match what we see at the petrol pump or in the supermarket. Amira, break down the drivers in plain English.
Sure, the downgrade is driven by global shocks, particularly the Iran conflict pushing energy prices higher and lingering post-COVID disruptions in supply chains and investment. Higher energy feeds into production costs and inflation, which squeezes real incomes. That reduces demand, slowing growth. For the government, that means less fiscal headroom, harder to promise big new spending or tax cuts without increasing borrowing.
So, what does this mean in practice? More tight budgets, higher taxes, or simply a longer slog?
All of the above, potentially. The Chancellor's rhetoric is stability, which usually means cautious public spending and a focus on targeted support rather than broad giveaways. For households, expect continued pressure on essentials, food, fuel, heating, and a modest housing market. The OBR notes show small positives, house prices up about 1% year-on-year in February, but that's not relief for renters or for people facing higher mortgage costs.
And jobs? They're forecasting unemployment to peak later this year. So folks worried about their jobs have reason to be anxious. This ties back into the first story. If people feel economically squeezed, resentment about immigration rises. You can't separate these issues.
Correct. Policy choices in one area feed public sentiment in others. A fragile economy amplifies political risks, populist pressure, harder rhetoric on borders, and so on. That's why messaging matters, but so does competence, investment in growth, targeted support for those most affected, and clear plans for energy security.
Listeners, are you cutting back, delaying major purchases, feeling less secure at work? We want your voice notes. Say your town, one line about what's changed for you, and one sentence on what you want the government to do.
Let's pull the threads together. Borders, a tougher package that trades support for conditionality and offers up to 40k to some returnees. Security, an ongoing spying probe that raises uncomfortable questions about vetting and influence. Economy, slower growth, rising unemployment risk, and squeezed households. It's a sobering mix.
It is. And the political consequence? If the public loses faith that government can protect borders, keep spies out, and deliver economic security, trust collapses. That's the real danger here. Not a single scandal, but cumulative erosion.
But there is room for constructive response. Better targeted asylum processing, stronger and proportionate vetting, and disclosure in Parliament, and a clear economic plan focused on energy resilience and growth-friendly investment. None of that is easy, but it's practical.
Right. Action over theatre. People want solutions, not just headlines. Which brings us back to our question. Which of these stories hits you hardest? The 40k return cash, the spying arrests, or the growth downgrade? And why? Send a voice note. We'll play the sharpest ones on tomorrow's show and push back where needed.
Also, quick note. If you're planning to send material, keep it under 40 seconds, say your first name and town, and be respectful. We reserve the right to edit for clarity and length.
Yes, and if you start shouting at me, at least make it entertaining. Before we go, 2 quick hits. 1. Ministers say the asylum package will save money in the long run. 2. Security services are urging patience while investigations continue. We'll keep pressing for details on both.
And finally, on the economy, watch the energy story. If Iran-related price shocks continue, that's the #1 thing that could turn a mild downgrade into something worse. Households should think short-term about bills and medium-term about skills and savings where possible.
All right, that's the pulse today, raw and real. Keep those messages coming. Stay informed, stay safe, and I'll be back with more. UK Pulse, cutting through the noise. See you next time.